It's my feel-good breakfast show.
Welcome back, Mzansi. Yes, it is Human Rights Day, and today we bring you an important conversation because human rights impacts all of us. And as we reflect on this day, we're going to be diving into how far we've come and what still needs to change. So we've put together an absolutely impactful and pertinent panel. We're joining this conversation with Mandy Pearson, the CEO of the Restory Foundation. We've also got Jessica de Hurst, all the way from the Justice Desk. And then we have Katlego Sepotokele, the Legal Advocacy Coordinator at the Triangle Project. Now, everything from gender-based violence to historical trauma. We're going to be unpacking these real issues that are shaping our society today. So, can I firstly thank you all for being here this morning? An absolutely incredible opportunity to chat about so much importance, especially in our country, because, hey, 1960 Sharpeville Massacre, we are very well of the sacrifices that were made to kind of discover and put these human rights into place that are protecting us. How far have we come since then? How are we looking in terms of the human rights today? What would you say that progress is like? And of course, there is still some work to be done. Where do you think the situation is right now for South Africa?
Well, thanks for having us today. It's lovely to be here with such powerful, amazing people. Happy Human Rights Day as well to all of you. But yeah, I think after the end of apartheid, a lot of people in South Africa feel like, we've achieved our human rights, we've got them, we have a great constitution, we have great laws, we're good. And I think what we really need to recognize and what we need to own up to as a country is that not much changed after apartheid. Yes, we have laws, but what actually has changed in the lives of the majority of the people in our country? People still live in Bantustans, we just call them townships. People still have unequal access to everything in our country, from healthcare to education to employment opportunities. So we definitely still have a long way to go. And I think as the South Africans, what we need to recognize is that, we've turned human rights into just one of those words that we throw around. But human rights isn't just it's not something that's achieved. It's something that's fought for every single day, and we need to protect it every single day. And so I think today especially, but every day, we should recognize that every day we should be doing something extra to ensure that the rights of all South Africans and all people who live in South Africa are respected and protected.
Jessica, I love that because I think when you mention it, it's literally like a list that we've created, but it's not an action list, and we need to almost view it as such.
Exactly.
Yeah, you can look at it and it's a reminder, but like, what are we doing about it?
Yeah.
And that's exactly what you're mentioning. I love that. I think in the workplace especially, it's something that we can often find ourselves being in situations where I think South Africans don't even realize the human rights are being tested, questioned, or not being served. I don't know if you've got any experience in this, but I think it plays to the effect of us not being aware of our human rights, firstly. When we get this experience in the workplace, and I'm sure there's a couple violations that can occur, which I'm sure Mzansi is not even aware of right now. Can we talk about some of these violations that might be taking place and some of the steps that employers and people in the workplace can incorporate to provide that safety, to provide that well-being in an intense space like this?
I think, first of all, we need to recognize first the conversation of workplace in our country right now is a little bit touchy when we have like one of the most highest unemployment rates we've never ever seen, right? So also that is a challenge, and there's also human rights crisis. And of course, we can talk about a lot of human rights issues in the workplace, like we still have the gender pay gap. We still have workplace discrimination on basis of HIV and AIDS, sexual orientation and gender identity. So we can unpack all of that. How do we ensure safety in terms and inclusivity in workplaces? But I think fundamentally right now we sit with a human rights crisis of unemployment in South Africa, and I think before we even begin to think through designing inclusive workplaces, we first need to create work for our people. And that is still a human rights crisis in our country right now.
And just to add to that, I think it's really important the fact that so many people are unemployed. That doesn't mean that we need to exploit people because we know people are desperate. And that is a lot of the time what's happening in our country as well. People realize, oh, well, you're so desperate for a job, I'm going to pay you below minimum wage. That's not acceptable. We should be holding our employers to standard. I don't want to say a higher standard, it's just the standard, basic standard.
Absolutely.
Pay people what they are worth, treat people like the human beings that we all are, and make sure that, at a workplace you need to be safe. You should never be put into into dangerous or difficult circumstances or made to feel less of a human because of who you are. So at the workplace, we need to know our rights, and the employers need to know how they need to be protecting their employees' rights. I don't know if you want to add to that.
Yes, and I think it's more than just putting rules in place.
Yes.
It's about that culture, because unless the leaders of the organisation are actually they're instilling it, they're living it themselves, it's not going to happen. You can have all these rules and government can put these wonderful rules in place, but unless it's being lived as a culture, it's not going to happen. The implementation goes awry.
And I like what you're saying there, because it almost holds our employers and everybody accountable to this, because essentially there's a situation and they are exploiting that situation to the point where they are allowing it to happen in your workplace. So maybe this is something we should pay attention to. People aren't even aware of this. What can we do though? Because we're talking about important things like healthcare, housing, education. These are our rights, yet we're not receiving it yet as a nation. You mentioned this inequality right now, Katlego. What can we do about this to try and actually fix this? What can we put on that action list to make a change?
Well, I think, there's historic injustices, the current corruption that we see. But what does it look like for communities to come together and to actually make a stand? We see situations where children don't have a teacher for a term. A child's not allowed into school because they don't have a birth certificate. What does it look like for a partnership to form between the stakeholders and communities to kind of find their positive power to actually have a voice? And I think often they haven't had a voice, and that often leads to violence, etc. What does it look like for that partnership to really grow? And I think that's when we'll see rights growing in our country.
You remind me of a very sensitive question here, because in honesty, can we say that we are being failed as a nation, as people? Is this why communities have to now come together? Is this why we as a group of people need to take action into our own hands because we are being failed? Is that why we are having communities dealing with issues like GBV, Katlego, as an example?
Yeah, sure. I think one thing, as you've highlighted, you spoke about corruption. I think we need to understand that corruption is not a victimless crime. It has serious real consequences for people on the ground. Access to education, the erosion of state capacity, through corruption means that there's no enough to cater for education, for healthcare, to fix the gaps in healthcare, in education, in security and safety. So I think that we need to really understand what also really fundamentally what corruption does. And corruption is failure, and unfortunately, and it needs to be characterized for what it is.
Yeah. And just to add to that, I think there's different things we can do at different levels. I think we are honest as South Africans. We do say, our government's failing us. But it's not enough just to say that. We need to get more angry. We need to be incredibly angry. Even in the healthcare system, I think they said something like 30% of our doctors serve the majority of our population.
Wow.
That's completely unacceptable. The rates of children who read to understand is completely unacceptable. We have schools that have pit latrines. We have schools that have teachers not enough teachers to start off with, not enough educational materials and resources, but teachers that aren't supported and equipped to be able to really help empower our young people who are supposed to be the next generation running this country. So from us and our perspective, I think we need to take ownership of our communities. If our schools aren't performing, we need to go there and say why and demand action. If our ward councillors not doing their job, you need to know your ward councillor's name. Go to their house and say, I will not leave because you are my employee. We voted you in. And if you're not going to do your job, we're going to vote you out. We need to take that type of responsibility. So start with yourself, work on your community. Public sector, I always say invest directly in communities. Don't go through government, please. Just directly into the communities. But then also, I do think we need to be way more radical when it comes to holding our government accountable. Our Chapter 9 institutions like our public protector, we need to be giving additional powers so that real accountability can happen. We know that there's corruption in multiple levels of government, but whatever happens, when it comes to consequences and accountability, we have some work to do there.
And I think an important thing with that is, yes, it's failure of government, but it's actually a positive thing when communities come together. You actually want that. And so are we failing as well if we're not coming together and speaking. So I think we need to take accountability. That's where you're going to see change.
Yeah, we the people, the power is in our hands, and I can't thank all of you now, Katlego, Jessica, Mandy. You've been incredible as a panel. I wish we could speak about this for hours because there's so much to still dive into here. But I think what we've highlighted is the importance of us knowing our rights firstly, and knowing that we can hold others accountable, not just ourselves, but those that we've put in place to protect us, to nourish and garner these rights. So Mzansi, get involved in this conversation, make this an action list, and today we can hopefully celebrate the progress that we lay on year and year from now. But again, thank you so much for this incredible one, and I hope you can celebrate the progress South Africa's made today, ladies. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.